Hi everybody, nice to meet you tonight, and thanks for taking the time to out of your evening to come and see what I've got to show off, and thanks for the invitation as well, Sasha. Appreciate it. It was good to be able to come down here and talk a little bit about what I do and what I've been working on lately. So before I go into the slides, I'll quickly introduce myself. So I'm Zac Bailey. I've been a software engineer now for 18 years, followed my dad's footsteps into the development industry. Love every minute of it. To be honest, I've never been bored in my job, and it's sort of owe a bit of that to his influence and encouragement of my spirit when I was younger and this kind of stuff. So I mostly build stuff inside the screen rather than build hardware-y stuff, but the stuff that I've got tonight to show you is something I built that's a bit of hardware and a bit of software that I'm pretty proud of. And I really like solving learned helplessness problems, so problems which are minor inconveniences or just irritating inconveniences that lots and lots of people experience every day. I like making those problems just that little bit easier. It's the kind of thing that there's people out there solving really big problems and they have really big solutions, and that can kind of be hard. I kind of like solving those problems that are, if you just use good fundamentals well and you use a really simple solution, that they really cut through and eliminate a daily hassle. If you take a bit of friction out of everybody's day, then everything flows a bit smoother and the net effect can be quite huge. So what I've created, I hope, is something that takes a little bit of friction out of a lot of people's day. So I'll launch a bit into the slides and talk about what I've done, and I've been told I've got an hour to speak. I'm usually someone that gets told to cut my presentations down. This is one of the first times I've made it a little bit longer, so good luck and bear with me. I'm also a TAFE lecturer, so if I do settle into lecturer monotone, I apologise as well. So what have I built? So I built CareWindow. CareWindow is a product that I've come up with my sister, and CareWindow is a solution designed for elders in aged care to help them connect with family. So the catch cry we've got for our product came from my dad, which is that quality time with family is precious and nobody can stop the clock from ticking. So every moment that you can get with somebody is really important, and CareWindow is designed to help people have more moments with their family. The product we've made matters to three groups of people. It matters to families who want more time with their loved ones if their loved ones are in aged care. It matters to the aged care residents themselves who want to live richer and happier lives. If aged care being what it is, it's a place we put a lot of people, concentrate them so that we can provide the care we need. But if you're in there, it can feel like someone's put you in a box. And Dad certainly had that experience when he was in there. And my goal is to make it less like that, because sooner or later I'm going to have to go into one of those boxes. And aged care facility workers who are balancing too many time demands as well. The experience I had in aged care facilities was that there are fantastic people that work there that spend all day long making it a more enriching environment for people as much as possible, but the honest truth is they're stretched. They have a really hard time doing what they're going to do. And so my goal is to bring more family, more community into those facilities in any way possible, so that the aged care facility workers who are already juggling too much can spend more time looking after their residents and less time dealing with trying to plug in new things that I've given them to plug in. There's 371,000 living in residential aged care. That's a very small proportion of the overall population of a sort of an older age. So not everyone will go into aged care. In fact, it's actually a fairly small number of people overall that will go into aged care. A lot of people simply live at home till the end. But there's enough people that are in aged care that it's a pretty important thing to solve. 1.4 million Americans live in nursing homes. That's their equivalent of our aged care facilities. And what we've created suits about 1/5 of that market. So we're not trying to be the next mobile phone. We're not trying to be the next tablet. We've simply created something that we think suits about 1 in 5 people living in aged care today and makes their life a lot easier. So loneliness is a scourge, and it's something that all human beings face at all points in time, and one thing that's really common amongst all of us: if we spend too much time alone, we get less happy. So loneliness can really be crushing, and some people need a little bit of company and some people need a lot, but we all need some. So we've come up with CareWindow because it's designed to help resolve issues of loneliness as much as possible, where possible. More than 2/3 of those that are in elderly and residential nursing aged care will have at least moderate loneliness, and 1/3 will have severe loneliness. So severe loneliness being where it's impacting them every single day, moderate being where it's it's an ever-present, constant feeling. Social isolation is as bad for you as being overweight or smoking. It's got that same significant risk: heart disease, dementia, stroke, and so on, simply because we're social creatures. If we don't feed and water that, the same way if we don't exercise, the same way if we don't get enough sleep, it can be really dangerous for us. And social isolation is kind of this thing that we don't necessarily have a lot of mechanisms in place to try and solve. We can tell if somebody's smoking every day and we say, hey, probably do less of that. Or we can tell if somebody's eating themselves in an early grave. But if somebody's isolated, we don't catch it as easily. And even in an aged care environment, it doesn't always seem to be a priority for the workers to try and resolve, because they're just simply trying to help people through other health issues. So it leads also beyond significant health risks to higher risk of depression, anxiety, and suicide. Like these are real facts. These are things that can happen, and if you spend too little time around people, it can be terrible for your mental health and rob you of the joy of the human experience. And I believe people deserve to experience that joy all the way up their entire life. So CareWindow, it's a little bit cutesy. We say it offers the soul a hug. It's very. We've made sure that it's a little bit fun. We use these same slides when we're presenting it to anyone that hasn't seen it for the first time, and we want to really cut the message through. We want to go from the last one's a bit stark, it's a bit confronting, so to make sure it's a little bit fun too. And it's designed really to bring people into everyone's life, regardless of whether they've got cognitive mobility, dexterity, or sensory impairment. It's designed to help overcome those barriers that certainly could face us all. So bringing people's family into the room with them when they're in aged care is our goal. We solve some very specific problems, and hopefully the text on the thing is big enough, but if it's not, it's okay, I'll talk to it anyway. So elders in aged care have an opportunity and desire to make the most of their time. So something that, a lot of people say, well, if they're healthy, they've got TV, they'll be fine. Well, no, it's if we're in aged care, we're in there because, it's very salient to us that we want to make the most of the time we've got in there. We don't want to feel like we've been stuck in that box. In fact, we want to make the most of it because it's one of those most critical times. And that time can still be well spent, even if mobility is a challenge, even if dexterity is a challenge. Someone that's had an entire lifetime of wisdom to pass it along. I remember sitting with Dad. Dad had a hard time communicating when he was in aged care because he had verbal aphasia, so he couldn't pick the right words very easily. But I could still sit there with him and be patient, and he could still give me input on things I would do every day. I remember when my business wasn't doing all that well, I'd sit there and I'd just tell him about all these great things I was doing, and he could cut right to the chase. He'd say, "But Zac, is it making money?" I'd say, "Okay, good point, Dad. I better get back to it." So the amount of value that can be given and the amount of interaction and participation that can be given, even though Dad couldn't get up on his feet by himself, even though he had a hard time stringing sentences together, he could still certainly cut to the chase and help me out with his wisdom. If someone that might be in aged care is also reflecting a lifetime of experiences, they still want to grow, they still want to experience the constant change that we all do, that we all desire to experience every day of our lives that enriches them. We want to take on new perspectives, continue to evolve our viewpoint, and continue to grow and engage with the community just the same as when we aren't in aged care. In fact, if we're in aged care, that sense of connectedness and community is almost more important than when we're out living in it. And everyday issues impact simply how much quality time you can get when you're in aged care. Gastro, flu outbreaks, COVID obviously being the one that's very relevant over the last few years, but even before COVID and certainly after COVID, something as simple as a gastro outbreak can mean that 10 people don't get to see their family for 2 weeks because they have to lock down that ward in the aged care facility to preserve life and limb. And while that's certainly important, it does mean that suddenly someone might be on their own for 2 weeks in their room and the only person they see is maybe the carer bringing them a meal a couple of times a day. And other ailments can just simply make it harder, eyesight, dementia, all these things can just make it easier to make the choice to say, I'll just stay in my room today. And technology, which a lot of people see as a silver bullet. When Dad was in aged care, our solution was, well, we'll get him a mobile phone. He'll be able to call us. Well, the phone's got 2 smaller buttons, we'll get him a tablet. Dad also was challenged by sequencing difficulties. So he had not full-blown dementia, but something called mild cognitive impairment. So it's along the train to that. And that meant that if I gave him the TV remote and I gave him the VCR remote, and he knew that he had to turn on the TV, turn on the VCR, and then change the channel on the TV to the VCR, that he couldn't put those actions in the right order. He'd get the power button on both remotes, or he'd get the power button on one remote, and then he'd try to do the source channel on the TV. And it was really heartbreaking to watch. This is the man that taught me about IT. I followed him into the IT industry. This is the man that taught me how to do virtually everything technological. He encouraged me when I was younger to enroll in a Cisco networking course, which was my first foray into engineering. Suddenly, couldn't put the right buttons in the right order for the TV. No matter how many templates we made for the remote control to say, press this one first, press this one second. It wasn't that he didn't know. It's that he simply had a difficulty controlling the impulse to press the second button before the first button. And that's something that can affect many, many people. So if using Skype or using a mobile phone or using a tablet is too difficult, and it is for many, our data says about 1 in 5, either for dexterity or cognitive, sensory or other impairment reasons, then when the TV remote's too hard, there's not good solutions out there for people at the moment. Giving someone a tablet and just making the font bigger on the tablet doesn't solve the problem of I don't know what order to press the buttons in, even if I know I can't necessarily do. And aged care workers themselves, who are fantastic while Dad was in aged care, go for it. Yep.
What about the remote controls or mobile phones with larger buttons? Still buy those. I mean, the number one button, the
Absolutely. The challenge is knowing what order to press them in. That was the thing that Dad definitely had a harder time with. So you can get these massive ones. You can get ones for kids as well that are really fantastic, and they've got like all 9 buttons all in the right order. But something as simple as, hey Dad, dial the number for home, or Dad, go to the menu, the little picture down the bottom with the contacts picture, then press our names and call us. Getting those in the right order, get it right 1 in 2 times if we were lucky. And then other things like something else that can happen is impulse control issues. So if you're holding the phone, there's a big red button on it that hangs up. And even though you don't want to press the big red button that hangs up, sometimes you might go, oh, we'll press that.
Sometimes it just plain disappears on you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So it's these issues that seem straightforward. Like anyone that, we all use our phones and we all go, well, if my eyesight goes or if something goes, I could use my phone and I'd still be able to press things in the right order, I'd still be able to do things. But then you get to that position where suddenly you can't. And where even if you can read the button and even though you know the order you should press it in, you go to press it and you just press the other one because the body or the mind betrays you in some way, which is really unfortunate. And it was very hard to watch with Dad. I had no idea. I thought I'd get him a big tablet and just make the buttons big, but it didn't work, which was really unfortunate.
It's a lot more complicated than using a landline where you just pick up and dial a number.
Absolutely.
All buttons.
You've got to keep it charged, you've got to unlock the screen, you've got to know where the button is. The button will move on you because you'll install an update on the phone because to keep it more secure, but it'll put the button in a different corner all of a sudden. The numbers at the top might add some extra numbers if you get it from one cell carrier versus another, so suddenly the family's name will get pushed further down the phone. The photos in the phone book that were there a moment ago might not be there after a new update. So the amount of things that could just go wrong with technology when somebody's struggling to operate the buttons on their remote control, even if they're big enough, even if they know what they are, is mammoth, unfortunately. So, and one of the other hard things, aged care workers, they're fantastic. So something that happened with that is they recognised in aged care what was occurring. The workers, the carers, the nurses recognised it, and so they would help him out. They would say, all right, what we'll do is we'll call the family for you and we'll give you the phone. Or we'll use the DECT phone, which is the nurse phone that they've got on the ward, and we'll call your family and hand it to you. But what would happen would be maybe he knew what order the buttons to press in that day, but his hands would shake, and so he'd drop the phone. And so the phone would get lost in the bed and he wouldn't be able to hear us. Or he would bump the speakerphone button, and so suddenly it was loud. I don't know what's wrong with it. Press the red button. Tried that as well, get lost in the bed. I tried, at first I had a Bluetooth device where it's a Bluetooth dongle, and I had that paired with his tablet. And getting him to make sure the Bluetooth dongle was on and getting him to make sure the tablet was connected, those steps, looking for that little icon in the corner and making sure the link was there, it wasn't able to happen. There were so many things we take for granted in setting up these devices for ourselves that suddenly in a position where we don't know whether to press that thing first, or we can't hold something steadily, or we can't necessarily recognise we're holding it the right way around. Something Dad would sometimes do is he'd have the phone and hold the phone backwards, so the speaker and everything would be facing out the other way. And he wouldn't recognise, he could hear us, but he wouldn't recognise that we couldn't hear him anymore. And they got to a point where we couldn't keep bothering the nurses and the carers to say, hey, can you help them work this out? They're running around administering medication, they're running around helping people. So it was a real problem, and it surprised me. It absolutely surprised me. I thought it would be straightforward. I bought him a pretty nice tablet too. And I thought, oh, well, this will work. But no, it just didn't. It got in the way, which is unfortunate. And I looked around and there was some products on the market where people had, they'd done a variety of things. So they'd either reduced the amount of options in an app that someone could use to dial someone, so they'd simplified a phone, or they'd created a watch that acted as a phone where you could scroll through and simply pick the family's name and use them as a contact, or they'd created like a large form factor thing that looked a bit like a TV, and they could just press the picture of the family member on that and dial the family member. Go ahead.
What about the, I'm not sure if they still have them, but at hospitals...
The Telstra bedside computers?
No. Back in the old days, there was a telephone. You just pick up the handset and it automatically dialed the taxi company.
Yep, they had those.
So can't you just have a phone that, like one of those old school dial phones, when as soon as you picks up the dog and bone, it just automatically calls your number. You don't have to do anything. That
was our dream, and that's funnily enough quite similar to what we built. So we realised that things like that were so simple were the solution. So the problem with a modern phone or a modern tablet is it's designed to do so many things. It's designed to be multifunction. And because it's designed to be multifunction, there's suddenly a lot of choices somebody has to make to use it. Whereas when you have the example of the instant cab call phone or the nurse call buzzer does one thing, they press the button and it calls them. Those appliances, they can be used by somebody that's in this position. And so I thought by looking at devices like that and appliances like that, somebody has to strip down all of the other complexity that exists in a phone, all the other complexity that exists in a laptop or a tablet, and just have it do one thing and one thing well, which is call family or get in touch with family. Even if they can't press the button, even if they can't reach the button, even if they can't speak out and verbalise and say, hey, I'd like to call my family now, they need something that would work and work for them every time. So that's what we came up with. I'll talk a little bit more about the impacts of the problem because they're quite relevant in terms of how we designed what we designed. So the number of people, it's sort of pretty much the same statistics here, but it really adds up to about 2/3 with moderate and 1/3 with severe loneliness in aged care environments, which means most people in aged care environments are impacted in some fashion. Because aged care environments self-select first for people who are going to be less able to reach out to their family, travel to their family, communicate with their family. And so because of that, we have this startling statistic of about 96% impacted. I went to a presentation earlier this year. I went to a conference run by ARIA, so that's the Aged Care Research Innovation Australia organisation, and they had two really fantastic speakers. So one was Bernard Salt, so the economist that has a column in the Australian and publishes a few interesting figures, and something that they pointed out, which I found really fascinating, but also challenging, a little bit hard to take, was the prevalence of anxiety and depression in people's lives, and how many people get to the point, not just where they're feeling lonely and isolated, but to the point where they've got significant, like clinical level anxiety or depression affecting their everyday. And around your sort of early 20s, there's male and female, so male and female at the bottom. Around sort of the early 20s, it suddenly goes from about sort of 10% of people to 20%. So you've got this really big spike. Quite a lot of people experiencing a significant amount of anxiety and depression. Then everything sort of settles down through around midlife or so. Probably the kids leave home or so, or retirement hits at around mid-60s and gets to a really good place. And then this is the bit that really upset me when I saw it, which is that as you get older, that prevalence of anxiety and depression just goes up and it doesn't go down. So the theory being that was presented at the time was that this is probably what occurs as a result of a loss of a life partner, which is unfortunate. It's going to happen to people. People outlive their partners.
They might retire at 65, they still might be useful for another 10 or 15 years, and then they realise that they're no longer useful. So Absolutely. Or they break a hip, or they can't enjoy gardening anymore, or they, all kinds of things that can happen. And that's scary because that's going to be me one day. And I looked at that and I thought, well, that validates, the trail that we're on. And it shouldn't need to be that way. You feel like people have a lot of things under control through here, and this isn't someone at their athletic prime. This is somebody that's in retirement age, and they're at this stage where anxiety and depression's at this lowest level, but suddenly it shoots up. And it shoots up because, we all fear the unknown, but also because I think there's just not enough done in this area to help with that. And there was another person that spoke at this event as well. Dr. Fiona Kerr. So she's a neurogenesis researcher, so neuroscientist, cross-medical researcher. And she put this picture of a brain on the screen that I went, okay, what does that mean? But she spoke to it in a way which was really useful to me. It said, these are all the important things that people do that help their brain stay healthy as they age. Most of these will be straightforward: exercise, sleep, learning new things, making sure we eat correctly, making sure we're eating food that's chewy. I didn't think that would be particularly important, but sitting around a dinner table chewing and spending time with people is quite important. And one of the ones that was mentioned quite strongly was interaction, so interacting with other people. One of the things we can do that challenges our brain the most and encourages it to grow and stay healthy is understanding the people around us, because we are some of the most complex things that we encounter on a daily basis. And you can sort of see the brain of somebody that's very isolated on the left, very few sort of all the wrinkly bits and all the right bits, and the brain of someone on the right that looks much healthier as a result of that interaction. So these two things really stuck with me. One is that there is this point in time where there's not enough being done, and the other is that interaction can help solve and improve those health issues. So that's my dad, Martin Anthony Bailey. He passed away 2 years ago, and I wish that I had longer to spend with him when he was aged care. That was the really salient problem for me, was making sure that there was another way to be with Dad that was better than the ways that we tried before he passed away. So we put together a product team, and you can see it's me and my sister were the first two people on the case, of course, because we were the most exposed to the obvious problem. I run a software firm with about 40 staff, so it was pretty easy to put the rest of the team together. So Ivan was one of my UX designers, Mim was one of my product designers, and Ray was actually my first boss's boss who came out of retirement to help me with this product, which was fantastic. He's a biomedical engineer by trade, and I've been getting lunch with Ray every now and then for about the last few years, and I've known Ray for about 15 years. And as I was chatting more and more about CareWindow, I said, look, I wouldn't mind being involved with that. Let's work on some things together. So he helped greatly along the way as well to make sure we had some good experience in working it all out. We've got a lot of others as well that help along the way, but these are the people I talk to every day to make sure it makes sense. So our mission, our goal, our product was to end loneliness in aged care, and we think we can do it. Our motto being, if you can't use, well, we've got the motto of the first slide about the time ticking, but this is our sort of philosophy with designing the product was if you can't use a TV remote, you should still be able to use a CareWindow. You should still be able to make it work. It's really designed to connect family, friends, but also volunteers, counsellors, medical staff to people in an aged care facility, and it should overcome dementia, low dexterity, limited eyesight, limited mobility issues. We came up with a few features that we like the look of. This slide's been around since we were first conceiving of the product, and we've gotten a bit more deep on these features, and I'll take you through all the fun bits. Now, this is the Inventors meeting, and I got told you guys like detail, so I've got plenty of detail for you, don't worry. So we set up a few key features that were really important to me. One was that it should answer by itself, should the users want it to. So if the family member that's in aged care is unable to reach out and hit the right button, or is unable to activate the answering by voice, is unable to hold a remote control and know which button to press to answer, is unable to dial the family on their own, then when the family at home says, let's connect, it should answer on its own. And it should do so in a way which is respectful of privacy, respectful of the dignity of the person in aged care as well. And to get that right took a little bit of balancing, and I'll talk about that again in a moment. We also wanted to make sure privacy was easy, so to counterbalance the fact that if it's set up a certain way that family can just drop in on each other, kind of the same way I know Mum always rocks up at my house without knocking sometimes. She says she's got the right to. She's like, I brought you into the world, I can do whatever I like. Okay, no worries, Mum. And then I say, I'll drop off my washing to her place, and so fair's fair. But we wanted to make sure that there was a privacy counterbalance to that. So simple privacy. So we've got a snooze button. So family do call if they drop in unexpectedly. You can press snooze. That'd probably be handy sometimes, Mum.
So the snooze overrides the automatic answering.
It does for a limited amount of time. So it'll do it for 5 minutes, and they press it again, 10 minutes, and so on. So it gives you that ability to pause the interaction. So, and it means if they press it by accident, they're not cut off. But it means
they can still they can do it after the call has been automatically answered as well.
They can. So they can press that at any point. They can put the device into a do not disturb mode for an amount of time. They can also, when the device is being called, they can say, I don't want to answer it right now. So when the family's calling, if it's in auto answer mode, what it will do is say, your family is calling, putting them through now. And it does it in a fairly slow paced, deliberate way. So it gives them about 5 seconds to be ready for the fact that the screen's about to come on. At any point during those 5 seconds, they can press the snooze button. At any point while the call is running, they can also press the snooze button. There's a hang up button and a snooze button, but they both have a pretty similar effect. Because if you press hang up, that means you don't want them to be able to just dial again straight away anyway. So we sort of have a snooze lag time built into the hang up button as well. The other side of that was we also had this idea of scheduled connections, and the scheduled connections it's a little bit different. It's a little bit what we're not used to in terms of how we use a communication device at the moment. We're used to, I want to get in touch with that person, I'll pull it out of my pocket, I'll dial the number and I'll have a chat to them. It's like a real-time intent-based communication. Something that I found that I was doing with my team a lot during COVID was we would work on late night software releases. So we would be sitting there and someone's website would need fixing, and we couldn't do it at 8 o'clock at night because people were using it. So we had to do it at 2 a.m. And what we would do at 2 a.m, we weren't always in the mood to talk at 2 a.m, but we knew there was a job to be done and it maybe needed 2 or 3 people to do it. So we would leave a Zoom call running, and all of us would be on that call. We could hear each other, we could call out to each other, we could say, hey, have you done that thing yet? And are you even at your desk anymore? And all those other things. We could hear the family members saying, why are you still up? But it was very useful, and we would run that as a sort of a background thing, and that would keep people not feeling like they were stuck alone, especially during a point in time where a lot of people were in their homes alone. I employ a lot of software engineers, and a lot of software engineers are young individuals. As a result of that, they've often got the finances to buy their own house, and they might be on their own in that house. And during COVID, they might not have seen people for 8 months. So it was really important for us to keep people connected during those times. And I looked into what we were doing, and it turned out it had a name. It was called telepresence. And that's the notion of being in touch with somebody, but it's not an intent-based phone call. It's just simply like a portal between your room and their room. You can hear them, they can hear you. My biggest dream for CareWindow is that it gets accepted to the point where there's a CareWindow sitting in the loved ones in aged care room, there's a CareWindow sitting at home, And the mum and her kids at home can hear Nan's TV in aged care, and Nan that's sitting in aged care can hear mum telling off the kids at home. Creates these two rooms in a really connected way, creates this passive connection that means it's like they're in the same place. So if somebody needs to leave home to go into aged care, well, it's like they're still in the household. And this concept of a scheduled connection is at a certain point in time, the care window will simply connect. And if there's one at home or if there's another device at home that can support it, they'll just connect to one another, and those rooms and those homes will be connected now.
It's very similar to just initiating having a mobile phone, just leaving the call
Just
running.
leaving the call running. Exactly that, exactly that. And we want people to get to the point where they no longer have to think about it, where they don't go, oh, I better call mum now, where they just come home and mum's home is connected already. They can already be connected to each other. So we feel that as a feature at the moment, but we don't often explain that as a feature to people when they first go to use it, because unless somebody sat there with the call running, they don't always get it. You know, the people, if you say, I'm going to create a phone that's going to work, it's an easy video phone, they'll get it. If I say to somebody, it's a telepresence device, they go, huh? So while it's something that those that do it, no, it works, and those, you know, intuitively we leave the phone call running as well with people so we can be comforted by their presence. It's not something that's easily explained to consumers because there's not a product category for it right now. So we still call it a video phone, but ultimately we really want to see it as a telepresence device. So that's why we have the idea of scheduled connections, and they're scheduled very deliberately because when somebody's in an aged care environment, you don't really want to see what happens before midday. It's a lot of moving around, getting things ready. It's not usually a very dignified experience, as Dad would definitely tell me. And also after about 7 o'clock at night, you probably don't want mum knocking on the door at that point, because at that point, if you drop in on somebody, well, they're probably getting ready for bed. So by default, the idea we have is that we've got these scheduled connections and these time gates that prevent, you know, family can't call before 12, can't call after 7, and they can adjust those time periods. And if they want, they can tick a box that says, okay, now the device will actually automatically connect in those time periods as well. We really like the idea of having a care window in the home and one in aged care and having them automatically connect to one another, but we're also very realistic about the fact that most people will want to buy one. They'll buy one, put it in their loved one's room, and they'll connect from their mobile phone. So that's our primary use case that we communicate to people, but we do know that the idea of two connected to one another would be a really cool thing to have. It also stays connected by 4G, so something that was really important to me and something that occurred to me when we were in Dad's aged care room was the maintenance staff don't have much time. They've got like lots of TVs, they've got lots of things to tag, they've got lots of electrical safety stuff to worry about, they've got dozens and dozens of rooms to just make sure that the trains run on time and make sure the lights work. So they don't have the time to go in and go, let's help you get XYZ device connected to Wi-Fi. They don't have the time to go, oh, let's make sure this and this works. The carers will do their best to facilitate it, but we didn't want to just be another device that someone had to work out how to connect, because the very real fact is if it takes somebody half an hour to work out how to connect something to Wi-Fi because they've got to get a hotspot or they've got to get permission from the person that runs the aged care facility to get the password to get connected, that will translate in the real world to 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe 2 months before they actually get around to doing it, or before the password works, or before the right person is there when they're visiting to get it all hooked up. So we wanted none of that in the product. We want it to be, you pull the product out of the box, you turn it on, and you can be connected straight away. Because if you've got the average length of stay in aged care facilities about 18 months, you don't want to lose 2 of those months. You could be more connected to tech setup hassles. So we're very deliberate in that we wanted a 4G connection in the device all the time, and we're inspired a little bit by Amazon Kindle, the way they have WhisperNet built in. So if you get the 4G Kindles, they have a data plan that you actually don't pay the month-to-month data on because it's just transmitting text data. We wanted to do something similar, is sell these with embedded SIM cards, embedded data plans, so that somebody, if they have to pay something every month because it's transmitting videos, so be it, but hopefully it's not a lot. Well, we know it's not a lot because of the way we've managed to get a deal around it, but the idea being that these things can just be, you get them out of the box, plug them in and they work. You don't have to connect them.
Another issue is with Wi-Fi, even if it's all set up, that no one, someone like yourself, whatever, gets it all set up, then they might get a power failure or the Wi-Fi
It goes off.
out.
Yep.
There's no guarantee that it's going to automatically connect again, so you have to do the process again.
Absolutely true, absolutely true. And the idea of walking someone through in the aged care facility and saying on the phone, hey, can you reconnect the thing? Like that's exactly the kind of thing we try to avoid with the design. Security was also very important to us. We realised to be trusted, to be able to be accessed by the users that we wanted, that we couldn't be another Facebook portal. We couldn't be another product that just said, oh yeah, we'll use that data, because we were selling it to vulnerable people, selling it to people who, I think are often the target of scam callers. It's the kind of thing where people do for that target. So we very upfront not just said security is number one from a basic perspective, we will also never sell any data that we gain to advertisers. And that's very intentional. Right from the beginning of what we created as a company around this product, we make that commitment. We've also made sure it doubles as a dementia clock and a photo frame. So I don't know if all of you have seen a dementia clock before, but it looks like that's what that looks like. Yeah, absolutely. So a dementia clock, it's a large form factor, large text-based clock. And it sounds like a very basic thing, but it's got the day of the week spelled out in writing. It's got whether it's evening or morning spelled out. It's got PM, AM, and it's got the date and it's got the month written in full. And you can buy a dementia clock for about $20 off the shelf right now. And for somebody that's...
And that's all it does?
It does.
Dementia clock.
That's all a dementia clock does, correct. Whereas a CareWindow does a little bit more.
Yeah.
So a dementia clock, all it does is that, and they cost you about $20. And so what they are essentially is somebody's taken a digital photo frame, because most of them are retrofitted digital photo frames, and they put a clock image into it and it just displays that. Dad had one of those in his room, and he also had a $2 wristwatch because he would prefer to wear that than his expensive one, because he knew if he lost it in the bed, it wouldn't matter to him. And I would watch what would happen. He would, mealtime was about 5 o'clock in the facility he was in, and from 4 o'clock onwards, he'd be looking at that watch constantly, because Dad needed other people's help to get out of bed. For him, the time gave structure to his day and relieved his anxiety. The fact that he knew what time it was, when it was, and he could spend that 45 minutes before he needed to be in the dining room mentally, physically, and getting the help and support he needed to be prepared was really important. So we figure if we want something that people are going to look at, and some people won't always be cognitive enough to know that's the phone, well, they'll be looking at the clock. It becomes habit. You're always going to put the clock somewhere you can see it, which means that they'll set it up in the right place. You're always going to be able to glance over at the clock, and it will become habit. So when you hear that noise in your room, you might just happen to look at the clock and see families on the screen. And also it serves a very simple purpose. Why not do what 2 appliances can do? Once they've got this, they don't then need the dementia clock. It's a digital photo frame as well. We don't have any photos running on that one at the moment, but we figure that's a pretty cool idea too, because who doesn't need enough photos of family in their room?
That one there can double as a photo frame as well?
That can do photo frame too.
So
Yep.
how do they switch between the two?
What it will do if it's got the photo frame is about every minute, it will then rotate through a picture, and it will come back every 5 minutes to the clock.
It just does it automatically?
Just does it automatically. Yeah, that's the way we had set.
With the time, can you make it 24-hour time instead of AM, PM?
We can't at the moment, but that's probably a good idea, because I think some people will prefer it. They'll be used to looking at the 24-hour time. So we haven't set that in there at the moment, but I'll make a note of that. I think it's worth doing. And we've made sure it's affordable as well. So our manufacturing cost on the unit is about $250 Australian at the moment. We're getting that down to about $180 Australian at the moment. The rule that we understand in terms of retail hang sell good manufacturing is that you should spend about 1/3 of your cost should be manufacturing cost, 1/3 should be your net profit to reinvest in future products and to keep the business sustainable. 1/3 should be marketing, and that 1/3 you can break it down by turning that into discount. You can provide that as commission to other people that sell the product, and so on. And I've not sold physical products myself before. I'm a software engineer, I know how to build those. But I did a lot of investigation into how products should be priced to make it work in a sort of competitive retail landscape, as well as being sustainable, because it was important for me to make sure I set the price correctly and didn't turn around in 2 years' time and realise I couldn't keep making them because I hadn't built a sustainable business. And all the retailers that I spoke to in my research sort of kept coming back to that rule of 3. 1/3 manufacturing, 1/3 marketing, and 1/3 profit. So that made a lot of sense. So we kept with that. And it took me a while to find a unit we can actually build at that price as well, because fortunately we have no batteries and we don't have miniaturization, because we don't need either of those things. So that allows us to build it at a price point. And $650, we feel it's a different cost compared to an iPad. You might spend $1,200 on an iPad. You might spend $1,000 on a phone. We don't want to cost that much. It doesn't make sense. We want it to be something that people don't have to think that hard about buying. People can impulse buy an Apple Watch. We want them to be able to impulse buy these as well, because that means they're more likely to have that product in place early when it's needed, rather than put off the decision. $650 is also chosen quite strategically, because there's the NDIS discretionary purchasing threshold of $750, and that's the amount that you can spend on something under NDIS without needing permission from your plan manager or those that hold your NDIS wallet. And so as a result, the individual themselves can choose to buy it without needing to get that additional permission if they have an NDIS package in place. Yeah, we're happy with that one. And so these are the products that are out there at the moment. Dementia clocks, which are great, but they only do one thing. Video phones, too many buttons, too much complexity. I mean, just look at how much is on the screen there.
What's the operating system behind? Is it?
We're Android. We picked Android 10. Android 10. And it's been very stable for us, which is pretty fortunate. The dementia clocks themselves will tend to run like a limited cut-down distro of Linux, if they even run an OS. Like, they're very, very lightweight, whereas ours runs an Android on a Rockchip 3399, which I'll show you a bit more in a moment as well. These are some of the other products we looked out at. So even when they try to make it really simple, they've only got a few buttons on the front here. it still ends up being 2 or 3 menu levels deep. As soon as they add a few more features, there's just too many things to press. And this has been the prevalent trend that we've seen in products designed for aged care. They're great for that 80%. The 80%, the 4 out of 5 people who can use an iPhone, who can use a tablet, the products that exist also suit that market. They just make things a little bit bigger, but they don't suit that 1 in 5 that are going to struggle with sequencing difficulty or dexterity challenges to the point where they can't get the buttons. And challenges like trying to hook up to a hotspot in a room. As I sort of brought up earlier with the Wi-Fi, like trying to troubleshoot a hotspot. Can you imagine me getting on the phone to Dad after he couldn't turn his VCR on and saying, oh, it's dropped off the hotspot. Can you see if you can reconnect it? Even the iPads, the really big ones, they still have so many options to them. Even the phone that everyone carries in their pocket, there's just too many things to press for that 1 in 5.
You can still configure a tablet and get rid of all those icons, just get rid of them on the screen. You can just have one window with just one button on it.
True, but then you've got to get past the lock screen. You've got to make sure that they know how to swipe past it.
You can just leave it permanently plugged in with no lock screen.
True. You can even put it into kiosk mode, and you can have it so that when you reboot it, it goes into kiosk mode, and so the app comes up straight away. That might be a little bit of what we built. So the challenge being that an individual that takes the tablet that they bought and tries to configure it like that, that was me with Dad. We had Dad a Samsung tablet, and I knew how to put it into kiosk mode. I knew how to make sure it stayed charged. I knew how to make sure it was connected to Wi-Fi. I knew how to pin the app so we could have Zoom or Skype running. But those steps, getting each one of those steps right, I could either sit in the room and I could make that work on his tablet, or I could spend a bit longer with him, talking to him, playing Lego or watching a movie. And so that meant that even though I consider myself someone that's quite technologically enabled and technologically capable, even though I had the knowledge, the task got put off enough, or enough glitches came up in the task that we couldn't get something reliable in place for Dad. So we wanted to make it something that doesn't require those steps, because people will take those steps, but we want to make sure that everybody has the option of making it work.
Zac, is one of the issues that once a new update comes through, it restores everything back, so you've got
It blows it away. Absolutely. There's always things to fight with on the device. The unfortunate thing about Android is that kiosk mode works, but you need to actually do things to the device. You need to actually root the device in some cases to get to kiosk mode, and so that's an extra step that a lot of people won't take.
Kiosk mode, how does that work?
So that's where you have one app that comes up when you turn it on, and that's the only app that comes up. Or you can do something alternative, which is pinning an app, and that's where you have the app stay present on the screen, and then they can't get to the menus behind it. It just shows that one app.
So how do you do that?
I'll show you a bit later on. It's all right. I've got a good way to do it. So that's what we found, and we found that a lot of people would get stuck on those hurdles. So we went through a progression of hardware. We put a few things together to make it work. We started with a mock-up explainer unit. We built one in 2 weeks. It was done with iPads originally that were on loan from Flinders, and we validated them in a workshop with carers from Anglicare SA. We then built a Mark I prototype. We just bought tablets off the shelf. We configured them, changed them, and put them into something we could put in front of people so they could understand what we're trying to build. And we got the software started so that people could touch and feel and understand it. Then we came up to our Mark II unit and their production units. We have one on the table tonight. These are able to be built to mass market. They're built to the price point that we needed. They run a Rockchip 3399, which is a diverse open source chipset. They run Android. The downside of them, they don't have acoustic echo cancellation hardware chips in them, but they do have software acoustic echo cancellation. It just means that there's better audio that I can improve in the future. And we manage them remotely with a product called Tiny MDM. So that's mobility device management, enterprise management. It's something that's an Android feature, and we've got a product that hooks into it that lets us update the software remotely, manage it remotely, and look after it. We're currently trying to improve audio. We've got an audio plug-in device that makes the audio even more powerful, although it's pretty good as it is. And we're evaluating whether we change our video server from Jitsi, which we're using at the moment, to Zoom or Twilio, which also provide a pretty strong capability. We've got Mark III units that we're thinking about. The difference with those is they'll have hardware AEC. We'll go to the point where we're self-hosting the enterprise mobility management software, meaning that we won't have to pay a license cost for every unit we put out into the wild at the moment, so that'll reduce our management costs so that we can scale. And we're moving from what we currently host, which is a Jitsi server that we host, to hopefully using Twilio or Zoom, which will mean we have a globally available video server network, which will mean that someone in China can call their family here, or someone in Europe can call their family here, so that we can solve that problem without latency. Jitsi's available everywhere, but I found that it's not as strong for those cross-continental connections, because when we host the server ourselves, it only routes through our server. Whereas when we use something like Zoom and Twilio, they've solved all that like piping in between as well. Twilio, they make an SMSing product as well. So they've got, they generally a bulk SMS gateway, but they've also got a really good video streaming gateway. So we were fortunate enough to come across them when we were working on something else and realised that they were a pretty good option. So that was our Mark 1 prototype. Those were the CAD drawings. I haven't brought one with me tonight because they're a bit big and a bit clunky. It splits down the middle so that we can actually get the tablet in and out, because this is really a mock-up testing unit. It's got quite a few screws as ballast so it wouldn't fall over because it had a heavy tablet in it. We modified it. We realised we wanted a way to hide the camera from people, and the Mark II that we've got as well has a pretty nifty way of getting that done. So on the software design side of things, I followed a few key design principles. I wanted to make sure it was intuitive, it could work for the resident and their family, work for carers, few buttons as possible, had to be audio and visual alerts for low eyesight or low hearing, and I need to use clearly recognisable icons, and it had to be secure. This was what the original mock-up operating system, operating software looked like. It was pretty basic. It was enough for us to demonstrate to people what we were intending to do. And we put that in front of a whole bunch of people that worked at Anglicare that were able to give us their feedback, and we were able to achieve a bit of funding as well to take it to the next level after we'd put in significant funds ourselves. We then drew up our next generation. All right, this is what we're going to do from a user interface perspective. Great artwork, as you can see. That was sort of me trying to throw down exactly how we want it to work. Oh yeah. And I put a lot into it, making sure that every little bit of it would work, but I couldn't make it pretty. And then one of my team tried to make it a little bit prettier, still not so pretty yet. And then we managed to make it quite a bit prettier. So we've got the current user interface design, which we've got a graphic designer in the team, and I said to them, I'm not going to be able to make it pretty myself, so give me a hand if you can. And they were able to put something together that really looked quite nice and tended to work. They can put it in do not disturb mode, set it for a certain amount of time, pair it, and so on. And this screen really just has the only buttons to press are really the individual calls to different family members.
So call all, it'll be a five-way.
It'll do a five-way call.
Five-way chat.
Yep, exactly that. All the ends ring at once, and it becomes a really simple single button to press. The pairing process is simple. We use a QR code at the moment, although we have learned that there's an even simpler way to do that. And we've got pretty straightforward settings screen. So the family say, do you want it to automatically answer? Even when it's in do not disturb, do you want to be able to break through that and automatically answer, which still warns the family, hey, this is in do not disturb, are you sure you want to call? And do they want an audio alert when it's going to be connected or not? And so we came up with something that we feel was pretty intuitive. As few screens as possible was really our goal from a design perspective. And then
Calling is good too, like you can have it automatically call at 9 PM to make sure they're in bed or whatever.
exactly that. It's like that knock on the door with that person checking around. And then we went to the task of building it. So as we built each screen, we sort of crossed them off and got quite a bit of a way through that process. And I won't read all these out to you, don't worry. But these are all the interactions we had to consider when we're putting it together. Things like impairment facilitation as well, making sure that, when it's initiated by the resident, making sure all the various things would come off. That's about 1/10 of our test plan, but that's the core use cases. Each feature was really important to get right, so we took the time to think about every detail. So with automatic answering, we make sure we've got those time gates, the option to disable it, as well as we selected the aged care environment because it reduces the risk of elder abuse. If this is in somebody's home and somebody manages to somehow break in and call the unit, or if somebody pinches someone's phone and goes, what's that CareWindow button, presses it and sees there's somebody on the other end of it, if they're in an aged care environment, someone's going to hear the yelling down the hallway. Someone's going to hear like, hey, what's going on in that room? Why is that, random person talking to that person? So if we have this in people's homes, which we do want to have eventually, there's a little bit less supervision around it. And because it is a communication device designed to put the vulnerable in touch with the outside world, we deliberately said if we do aged care, there's at least somebody on hand to help if the person has a random gate crasher on their device, which we do other things to prevent, of course, as well. We made sure that from a practical perspective, there was a snooze function. It's got a plastic front rather than a glass front, so they can put it on its front. We spoke to all the aged care workers and they said, when I go into the room, I'm not going to even press buttons to snooze it. I'm just going to put it on its front so it can't see. Because when I go into that room, they're probably going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to move somebody with a winch in their bed. It's not a dignified moment, and I don't want their family to have to drop in on them while they're doing that. We don't mind the idea of a camera in the room. In fact, we in aged care live every day with the idea of a teddy bear cam that can potentially be in every room. But we do want to make sure the resident dignity isn't affected. So we'll walk in, put the unit on its face, and we walk out, we'll tilt it back upright again. And with that feedback, we said we'll make it plastic so it doesn't break. We wanted to make sure it was clear and easy to use, make sure they could be controlled from the other end, controlled from the phone. And we use on a technology perspective, from a technology solution perspective, 2 ways of making sure it always answers. Either a push notification goes to the device behind the scenes, the resident doesn't see it, it just uses that as a triggering mechanism to make sure it can receive the call. And if that's failing, it also sits there and just constantly checks, is there a call for me? Is there a call for me? So we have redundant mechanisms to ensure calls can always get through. From a connectivity perspective, we made sure it's got a bit of everything. It does have a wired LAN port in the back, so if people want to use that, they can. It does have wireless. It also has 4G, and it also has Bluetooth, but we use that mostly from hearing aid compatibility perspective. Easy setup was important, so we had to make sure there's as few steps as possible in setting it up, and someone has to be told exactly what to do. They shouldn't have to search for menus. Large fonts in plain language, it all must be accessible. And originally we had this QR code, and we still have the QR code as the way to pair it. So you plug it in, you turn it on, the first thing that comes up on the screen is a QR code, and the family scan that, and that means that now their phone is paired to the unit. And from then on, the unit will display, person XYZ has paired to this unit, and they can then call it without needing to do the setup again. We showed it to a lot of people, and I realised about 1 in 2 people didn't get the QR code when it came up, even though it said scan this with your phone. But a lot of people said, oh, how do I get it to send me its number, or how do I get it to text me? And so we're going to add a feature as well where someone can type in a phone number when they first set it up, like their own mobile number, press text me a magic link, and then they get a link they can pair to the device as well for those that get challenged by the QR code.
Some people still don't realise that you can just open up the camera on the phone and scan the QR code.
Surprised me too. Yeah.
Yeah, you can with Android now.
The Samsung will do it now, default in the operating system. But I think for the longest time, people didn't take the time to do it. And a lot of people, some people just didn't go out during COVID, so they didn't have to do it on the buildings where we all got used to doing it. Most people in any room will be used to doing it now, but we still hit a few people that hadn't. So we thought we'd make sure we had both approaches to cater for both. Security was important, so every device has a unique built-in ID, and we use certificate-based authentication, so we know if it's one of our devices and we know which one it is. We made sure we don't use a phone-based system, so it's not like a SIP-based system where someone calls in on a number to the device, but rather you have to install the app and paired with the device to be able to call it. That means no telemarketers. And we also have brute force prevention, so if someone is trying to discover a way to connect to the device, we ban them before they manage to get onto one of them.
So what does GUID stand for?
Global Unique Identifier. So that's a pretty cool number. So what a GUID is, it's essentially a randomly generated string of characters, so letters and numbers, and it will be globally unique. If you generate one now, no one ever is likely to generate that same ID again. And so we use that as a way of identifying each device, and that's sort of the device's virtual phone number, if you will. So the chances of somebody guessing the virtual phone number of that device are so minuscule that by the time someone who was trying to guess it could eventually guess it, the universe will have ended instead. So there's enough entropy in the length of the potential combinations. There are so many billions and billions of combinations that even if someone was guessing like every microsecond, like what's it going to end up being, the complexity is high enough. So we use in software a lot for unique identifiers. We use globally unique identifiers or universally unique identifiers, so GUIDs or UUIDs. And we've used that very deliberately to avoid someone being likely to guess the ID of that device. That means that if you've got a phone that's paired to it, it knows the ID because it's literally going to read it off the screen at some point. But if you go to type in the ID of a device, or if you try to guess the ID of a device, I should say, it won't be practical. We've also our mass market hardware. So from a software perspective, from a hardware perspective, we had some other design principles. It had to be physically strong. It had to deal with spills and falls. We knew that would be a very practical thing. We didn't want it to look high-tech. Some of the other products we looked at looked a little bit too gadgety. We wanted it to be uncomplicated. It had to look exactly like the dementia clock. They had to be able to blind it, put it on its face, and it has to be usable, loud enough to pick up to make audio, loud enough to hear audio from up to 3 meters away. We had to make it sure it was affordable, and we wanted to make sure it was carer-friendly, so we don't have a big gadgety-looking camera on top of it because that could be intimidating to an aged care worker walking in going, am I on camera? Something we found through our research was actually most aged care workers are perfectly comfortable being on camera, and there's government-funded research that backs that as well. They actually, when they were looking at the idea of having CCTV in every aged care room, the carers actually said, ultimately, while there's a few issues that could come up with it, we would be okay with that. But it's then about how you communicate it to make it easily acceptable. And so for us, it was very deliberate to say this is a communication device, not a surveillance device. And so it had to make sure it looked like one as well. Because that means there's less likelihood of someone saying, I don't know about that, and more likelihood of being able to use it. We went through 3 different devices that we like the look of. Actually, we went through about 15, but these are the top 3. One was a wall mount, one was the unit we have on the table there today, and one was these alarm panels that are actually used by Bosch as well, these really, really good alarm panels. We ended up settling on the desktop unit. So it's the Mark II unit, we call it. It's a L-type unit. It has all this connectivity at the back, 2 omnidirectional speakers, as well as an omnidirectional microphone pickup on the front. We made sure we rendered it so we can put it into any pictures we need, mostly for marketing purposes. There's a lot of specs on it. Don't worry, I won't read this slide to you either, but I will send this out to you later if you'd like to have a closer look. It's essentially all the detail of how it all comes together, and it's got quite a bit of capability, so it's expandable in the future.
So you can have any different colours?
We have black and we have white at the moment. We actually have been told that we should have more, because that means that when we advertise the product, we can get more variety up on Google ranks for the shopping area at the top. So if we've got 4 different units and we advertise 4 of them, we can occupy 4 of the product slots in that Google shopping area. So we've been told we should have more colours so we can dominate more of the marketing bandwidth.
Bright colours are good too, like orange.
Very true.
The happy colours.
Absolutely, absolutely. Bright blues, bright oranges, things that someone can look at and that feel personal and feel upbeat when they look at it. So absolutely agree. So the chipset in it's a RK3399, so a rock chip. The thing we really like about these is their open source chip design. So there's many people that make these chips because the design is open source. It's uncomplicated, it's available, and there's a lot of information about it as well. They're ARM based, so similar to people's mobile phone, and ours runs Android. And getting it all to come together, we wanted to make sure that when we combine the hardware and the software into the platform that we create, for us it has to be maintainable, reliable. It has to solve the core problem itself really, really well. It has to actually, instead of us trying to build too many features in, we wanted to make sure we never fell into that trap. So no matter what design decisions we make about the platform, we had to make sure it did the main thing it was designed to do, which is create that simple communication connection. We did want it to be expandable in the future. It'd be pretty cool to be able to put other services over it, but for also, it has to be easy to support. We'd never want it to give out on people. So for us, it's easier to make it simple so that it's less likely to fail rather than try and make it more appealing with more features. The technology stack we used, so on the hardware side or on the app side, so it's a rock chip running Android, backed by Google's technology using the Dart programming language. We use the Flutter framework for the app that it runs on Android that's permanently present on the screen. We transport data using HTTPS, and we use a standard called Swagger in terms of how that data is structured between the client and server. And on the server side, we use C# and Postgres. So Postgres is open source, C# is also open source but backed by Microsoft. And for the video streaming, we use Jitsi, which is supported by a company called 8x8, which is again open source. For us, it was important and easy to use free technology because it means we can self-host it and keep it private and secure. And we use the audio compression algorithm called Opus, which is also open source. So we can actually modify the audio compression algorithm and boost different parts of the signal.
Opus, is that the same company that used to do audio tapes?
I don't know. I should look into that. I think they might have named it after it. I reckon it's. I think it's an open brand around the standard itself. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did have a background in other audio technology as well. We had to solve a lot of technical challenges. We had to make sure we could get tooling from the manufacturer to actually flash the units, because the rock chipset, there's many different flavors of it. So we had to talk to the people that made this specific chipset so we could actually flash the software onto the unit. We didn't make the chips ourselves. I wish we did, so that'd be pretty cool, but that'd probably be a little bit hard. There's people already in the world doing that. We had to recompile the OS with an updated bootloader and application loader so that it would hide all the things that we didn't want it to be confusing about. We had to get echo cancellation right, remote management, and make sure we quality assured the hardware as well. Acoustic echo cancellation is pretty cool. We use software AEC at the moment, which means it stops the speaker from echoing back into the microphone, which could be very disconcerting. You can imagine someone with dementia using this and hearing their echo back and it being very difficult. So it was very important to make sure that that worked a certain way so that the speaker wouldn't be re-picked up by the mic. We also found hardware AEC chipset. We haven't embedded in there yet, but we've tested a bunch of consumer grade microphones to find the ones that have the right chips in it. Now we've identified the right chip, we're going to take that out and use that in our Generation 3 units. For the audio processing technology, we're trying to improve the algorithm, that Opus open source audio algorithm I mentioned before. We're trying to modify it so we get less clicks and pops in the sound, because even using Zoom, even using Teams, using any audio compression algorithm, you still get these occasional clicks, pops and boops and noises that we really want to squelch out. So we are trying to work out how to do that. The audio quality, the nice thing about the Opus algorithm is it does have a very high audio quality, despite the fact it's also royalty free and open source. So we've managed to pick something we think is a real winner there. From a remote management perspective, we currently pay for a product called TinyMDM, but we're looking to an open source remote device management so that we can control and update the device when we need to. And this means we can roll out updates and monitor the device and make sure it stays running and scales into the future. From the video side of things, we're looking at tailoring the video compression algorithm as well. It works pretty well right now. It's less important to us than the audio because it works pretty well. We think the audio is going to be more important to get really polished first. And now we've got into production. So the units themselves are made by a contract manufacturer in China. They've put in the 4G modem and customised their design for us. And we have all the operating system source code. And we have electrically compliant plugs for Australian standards, so it's safe. It's able to be sold here in the US and Europe. There's no battery and no miniaturization, so we will always be more affordable than an iPad. We'll always be more affordable than an iPhone because we don't have to solve the challenging technology problems that they've got to solve. And if someone can operate an iPad or an iPhone, then they should buy one because they're one of those 4 in 5 people.
Needs to be permanently hardwired.
It does. The same as a dementia clock might need to, the same as any other appliance in their room. But if they can operate something that's battery based, then that works well for them. We may consider adding a battery to the unit in the future, but at the moment we've sort of seen it as a static appliance. It sits by the bedside in the same spot in the room every day. But that is a good point.
What's the miniaturization all about?
So you've always got to make a phone really small, and they've always got to be smaller and thinner. We never have to solve that problem. And so that becomes an expensive design process that we don't have to also take on. So it means we can always be...
In the event of a power failure?
Unfortunately, in a power failure at the moment, it does cut out, but that's...
They just need a backup?
Yeah, ideally they'd have some other way to keep it connected. That's something that we haven't solved yet at our price point. We might consider in the future, say, a unit that's got a battery in it that's charging all the time to just be able to be constantly connected.
So does it have to go into a mains, or can it go into a portable battery power?
It's mains at the moment, but if it did output either the right kind of DC power and then they just took the adapter off and used something else, or if they plugged it into a 240 volt converted type output, that would work. At the moment, it's really designed for mains use, but the idea of portable works. Shoot.
For all aged care homes, power isn't too much of a problem.
That have Jennies.
Aged care standards require them to have backup generators.
Beautiful. Well, that's handy. I didn't know that, so it makes sense.
It's a legal requirement.
It's from a health perspective, I guess, because they've got to run health equipment all the time. So, oh, that's good to know. Oh, problem solved. The packaging, I wish I could make it this pretty. This was done by one of our team, but we've got all that ready to go, and we've got them being printed out in Thailand. And what was important for us, I might go for just about 3 more minutes because I know we're running at time. We want to make sure we can communicate it really clearly to people, because even though it's simple, it still does a lot, and it's something new that people aren't used to. And if you say video phone, it still sounds complicated. So we like to say to people, it can keep you in touch more often. Your phone controls the call. So the resident, your loved one's just alerted to calls coming in, but they don't have to touch or say anything. Getting the messaging right and making sure that was clear was a key challenge. We have these different use cases, so the idea that they can connect with their loved ones with another CareWindow at home, or via mobile device, or they could connect with remote volunteer services, or this is kind of cute, we think it could also talk to a remote memoir writing assistance. As AI gets better, the possibility of someone wanting to talk to an AI through the unit is certainly there, although for us it's not a core focus at the moment, but we do understand that that could be something that might be useful in the future. We also want people to just use it to communicate in the aged care setting. So if you've got somebody in room B down the hallway and somebody in room F at the other end of the hallway that can't get up to one another to meet during the day, but they both like playing chess, there's no reason they can't have the units facing their bed and they can be playing chess with each other across the centre. Communicating with carers as well, it's an easy way for them to check in on the room. If they've heard the buzzer's gone off in that room and they want to have a quick peek, they could potentially make it available to them. Medication administration, nurses could use it to check in and make sure meds are being done on time. And we could also use the AI side of things to actually detect, has someone fallen over in their room? We haven't got that working yet, but it is a Doppler shift visual detection AI that can be used, but we haven't hooked that up because at the moment we would just want it to be family to resident. But you can detect if it's gone from, that person's normally in their bed to something has moved very quickly on the screen. And as soon as we know that they've moved very quickly, alert potential fall. There's already really good fall monitoring technology in aged care, which is why we haven't made a key focus of the product. But because we've got a video feed in the room, it's something we could possibly implement in the future. We also talk about the benefits of connection. This is just a few quotes from people. So the idea of volunteers visiting dozens of people a day, people not feeling trapped in their room anymore, and people that can share a meal even if they're not, they can't move around. And what do we do next? So where do we go next? So our strategic market insights show that we're a unique product in market right now, which is fantastic. There's similar products, but nothing that does exactly what we do. There are devices designed for older people to use, but they're still multi-purpose. They still have a lot of buttons, so they don't solve the problems that our device solves. There are softwares that you can install, Skype, Zoom, Duo, MS Teams, but again, they're not simple to use. They still have this issue. So every competitor we've identified out there in the market doesn't solve the price point problem and doesn't solve the feature problem that we solve right now. There's a huge potential. In Australia, it's a $10 million a year market. In the US, it's about 144 million, and across the world, it's probably about an $864 million market because of how many people there are, because of how aging is occurring. We're going to address those in aged care first, which means we can sell about 20,000 units in Australia, even if we get 1/5 of our potential addressable market. We've taken data from the ABS where we can actually see how many people with dexterity challenges are concentrated in aged care facilities, and we know we can sell to 1 in 5. North American expansion, when we scale up, there's suddenly more like 400,000 end users that we could reach. We've done a sensitivity analysis on our business model. What this means is if we get this much market penetration, how much money do we bring through every year to ensure we're sustainable? And there's an interesting thing where in the US, it only takes us to get about 1.5% of the market to be a very sustainable business. In Australia, we need only about 5% of the market, and that's that narrow market in aged care. We've also modelled those who are outside aged care facilities in Australia. Most of the time, those users can use mobile phones and tablets. However, we know that's a growing market. In the future, more people are wanting to age at home, and they'll have other ways to support them aging at home, even with various impairments. So,
Well, you know, with the new Aged Care Act that's going to be released soon, it's about helping people live independently in their home a lot longer.
Yep.
So where they would normally go to a residency, so that will change the market when that happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've identified that as a market, even though it's not a profitable market for us right now, because we know we need to be in it to win it. And as the trends change over the next few years, that will become larger. And so if we market to them now, we'll ensure we're well positioned for the future.
You could even have scenarios where people are fully functional, but because it's just so simple, they might just want it anyway.
I really hope so. That's absolutely.
Straight away, so,
Oh, fantastic. But no, that's a lot of people say that to us. They say, actually, this is so easy.
It's such a brilliant invention.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you. No, that really excites us, and that's what we hope. We hope that it gets out of our target market soon and to everyone's hands, because it's designed to be that video phone that we're all promised would exist in the future, but which hasn't existed yet. So we're at the mass market entry point of our journey. A lot of our marketing work is now going on around that, making sure we've got a few different things going on. We're going out to conferences, showing it to people, doing presentations like tonight, for example. And we've been loading up our systems as well to make sure that we get testimonials, marketing gear. Oh, don't worry, I won't sit you through the video. But all of our social media is ready to go as well. We need help now, so we're still up and running, but any small scale or large scale distributors could certainly help us a lot. So introductions to aged care facilities, electronics outlets, or anyone that sells assistive technology could be of great help. Large scale distributors, so anyone that sells large amounts of assistive technology, mass electronics, or an introduction to Telstra or Optus would go a long way for us at the moment. We've fortunately been quite good on the investment front, so we've managed to, investments carried us quite far so far, and we're now at the point where we're selling units, and selling units is going to carry us further. So this is a bit of an older slide, but anyone that is interested in that can of course ask me about it later, because there's still room on the bus. So we've really got our platform ready, and we've got customers that are eager. That's my grandma and that's my mum, or Yaya, I should say.
can I ask a question?
Shoot.
Is that Thelma?
That's Thelma. Hey, Cooper Petey, right?
Cooper Petey.
It's small world, very small world. So that's Thelma
Wow.
Vaqueris, who ran Trace's restaurant in Cooper Petey, that
Trace's
Sasha would be familiar with.
Which I've eaten at many a time.
Who's Thelma? Which one?
Top right. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's my mum, Helen, or Eleni Vaqueris. And
It's also created a bit of a stir, because when I put that up for the Inventors Association on our social media, all the Cooperidians started
That's Thelma.
engaging and saying, oh, look, there's a picture of Thelma.
Yeah, so my grandmother ran a restaurant that was very well known in Cooper Petey for a long time. That was a char grill that she ran with my grandfather as well.
Wow.
So that's that's very small world. So Yaya was kind enough to let me use her picture in our promotional materials. We've promised all of our early access users, so all the people we've sold to at the moment, we have sold units, free lifetime upgrades. So as we make the audio better, as we make the video better, people will get that for nothing if they sign on at this early stage. And that's pretty much us. So thank you for listening. I really hope you'll give CareWindow a go, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.